All right, if you are someone who feels like you're on a roller coaster of a ride when it comes to the scale, this video is for you. Because the truth is, the scale is going to fluctuate, and most of the time it has nothing to do with actual fat gain or fat loss, really, right? So if you don't understand what's causing that noise, we'll say that up and down, you're going to make decisions based on emotion rather than data. So I want to fix that for you. So let's make peace with the scale. So one, let's just understand why the scale is fluctuating in the first place. And I think the first reframe we have to understand here is that the scale reflects all body mass, not just fat. So when we step on that scale, it is not just telling you how much fat is on your body. There are a ton of other things that it's actually weighing, right? And what we have to understand is your body mass has a lot of different factors to why, let's say, that number is on the scale. So here are just some, and these are usually the biggest influences in terms of that number you see on the scale. So how much carbohydrate did you have? Because when we eat carbohydrate, you can hear it in the word carbohydrate. You're going to store some water with that carbohydrate as you are processing it. Your sodium intake, you may be intaking more, and so you're causing some water retention. You may have had an intense exercise session, and so you have some inflammation, which is causing more water retention as well. Food volume, you may have just physically eaten more food, and it doesn't necessarily mean more calories. It could just mean the volume of the food itself. And so, of course, then it's going to weigh more in your body until it is used and digested. Bowel movements or lack thereof. If you are not regular or you have a day or two of being irregular, of course, that is going to get reflected on the scale as well. For my female clients, hormonal shifts are a huge piece of what we see on the scale. Most women are going to see a bump in the scale right before their cycle begins. And so we have to take that into consideration when we are looking at the scale. And then sleep and stress. Those also affect water retention because of hormones that are released. It affects water balance, right? It's also going to affect hunger hormones, again, which is all going to get reflected on the scale. So the biggest thing I want you to take away from that is that none of those actually mean you're gaining fat. They just mean you're human. Your human physiology is just doing what it's supposed to do. So what we also want to understand is that the scale is not telling you a whole host of things that actually matter, especially when it comes to weight loss. Are you gaining muscle? Are you improving your sleep? Is digestion improving? Is energy up? Are your clothes fitting better? Have you reduced bloating? And so much more. I mean, there's a lot that we don't get told, or the data doesn't tell us when we just look at that number on the scale. And so let's say specifically with a fat loss phase, if all of these things are true, you're gaining muscle, you're improving sleep, digestion's better, all of this, right? And you're still hung up on a pound or two, or the number, let's just say on the scale, you're missing the real picture. Yes, ultimately in a weight loss plan, you're trying to lose weight, but so many other good things are happening and need to happen in conjunction with that. Right? So I want you to think of the scale as one of many pieces of a puzzle, right? So if you just look at one piece, it's really rarely helpful. Sometimes you can't even tell what is this picture that's coming together here, right? However, the more pieces we put together, the clearer that image is. So I want you to think of the scale that way. It is one data piece that we do want to capture, but it is not telling us the whole story. So keep in mind that progress is not just pounds loss. Again, like I showed you in that list, there are many things that are going to happen along a weight loss journey. What's really happening is a combination of factors, each influencing one another in a multitude of ways, which is why it's very hard to really be able to interpret exactly what that number means on the scale. So this is why we want to track things like your biofeedback. So what's hunger, craving, stress, sleep, energy, digestion, right? We want to see those things improve. Along with the scale, sure, we definitely want to take scale weight. We also want to look at measurements, and we want to look at photos, and we want to look at all four of those things in combination. Again, remember that puzzle. Your scale weight is just one of those pieces. And so let's talk about how to properly then use the scale, because we definitely want to use it, but again, it is one of many metrics that we're trying to look at. So one, we do want to weigh daily or at least consistently. So I, encourage people at least 3 to 4 times a week if you can't for whatever reason weigh daily. But we also want to do it under the same conditions, and that's really important. So I highly recommend first thing in the morning, after a bathroom visit, if you can. I understand not everybody's regular, and before you have any food or drink. And you want to do it that way every single time. You don't want to weigh yourself in the middle of the day. You certainly don't want to weigh yourself at the end of the day, right? It needs to be the same conditions and on a consistent basis. Second is you really want to understand and expect fluctuations. And for everybody, you can expect your body weight to fluctuate about 3%. So let's just say you are a 150 pound person. That means your weight could fluctuate up to 4.5 pounds, and that would be considered normal. That is just a normal possible, let's say, water retention or inflammation, or a combination of those things, more food volume, bowel movements, right? 4.5 pounds, and that's for a 150 pound person. That would be considered normal. Third, we want to look at your weekly average, not individual weigh-ins. I'm not concerned about one weigh-in, which is why we go back to this first point here that the more weigh-ins we can get, the better data we can get, and we get away from getting too caught up in one single weigh-in. Yeah, the scale might pop up one day. That's just one day, and it's likely just water retention or inflammation, right? So instead, I encourage you to look at your weekly average and do that over the course of weeks, not days. Meaning, you want to look at the trends over 2 to 4 weeks. So, what is your weekly average for week 1 versus week 2 versus week 3 and 4, rather than looking at day 5, 6, and 7. That's not going to be as helpful as zooming out and again looking at averages over time. Now, keep in mind that the scale is not the final word. Remember, it is just one tool. And so single weigh-ins can be really deceiving. This is again why I encourage, weighing in more rather than less, because if you just happen to weigh yourself on a day the scale pops up, that can be very deceiving. It can make you think you have gained weight when, really it might just be one day that the scale spiked. Trends are what give us the broader picture and give us a better picture, I should say, of what is truly happening. And again, we want to look at those trends over weeks and even months rather than day to day. So it is not the scale that is your enemy, although it can really feel that way, right? People can dread getting on that scale. The real enemy is your expectations. Your expectation that that scale has to go down every single day and every week is the problem. So even if you do everything right, I want you to understand fat loss won't be linear, especially on the day-to-day. If you're looking at, Monday versus Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you're going to see a roller coaster of numbers, basically. You should still expect, again, under the perfect conditions, you're doing everything right. The scale still will spike, and you still will probably have, phases of plateau. And we have to understand that progress will not always be visible immediately, as much as we want to. It's just not going to be something you're going to see right away. It might take some time for it to become clear. So the question here is then, okay, well, when should I be concerned? Because the reality is, yes, there is a time when, it's possible that we're headed in the wrong direction. So let me give you some help here. If after, and this is very important, 3+ weeks in a row, okay, so that's really, really important. And in those 3 weeks, you have been adherent and consistent between 80 to 90%. There have been no changes in any of your measurements, and your weight averages have been flat or increasing. Yes, in this case, you should be concerned. At this point, it is very likely that you are in a plateau or possibly gaining weight. But you can only evaluate this after 3 weeks in a row of being adherent and consistent and then seeing no changes or increases both in measurements and your scale weight. So before you make any changes, I want you to kind of, take a step back and first of all, audit your tracking. This is where I tend to see the biggest mistakes happening, because over time we tend to get a little more loose and a little less exact with things. Be brutally honest right now. If you are trying to, determine, am I in a plateau or am I gaining? You have to have accurate data, right? And you want to tighten up your accuracy, right? I usually, encourage, hey, 80 to 90% accuracy is good. If we're trying to evaluate whether you're in a plateau or, needing adjustments, then let's tighten that up even more to that 90%. I don't think you need to be at 100%. We still need to leave room to be a human, but we're certainly going to want to tighten things up in order to, properly evaluate what's happening. And I want you to do that for at least 2 weeks. And honestly, for my female clients, I would actually encourage 2 to 4 weeks because of your cycle, because we know hormones are fluctuating and they have a big impact on your scale weight. At that point, if the scale and measurements do not budge after this 2 to 4 week audit, really, you are likely in a plateau and need adjustments, right? Now, this is only typical after prolonged dieting. So if you're in the early stages of a diet, you're in that first month, let's say, it is likely your issue is with tracking, it is with your accuracy, or it is with your consistency and adherence. And so it'll be easily fixed so long as you can be honest about those things. All right, so here's what I want to kind of leave you with. Your job is to trust the process. Follow the data, not your feelings, not your emotions about, what the scale is doing, and stay consistent. Consistent no matter what, because when you do these three things, your results will come. Now, can I guarantee when they're going to come or how quickly? No, unfortunately, your body is going to do that on its own time. But if you are, sticking with things, you are following data rather than your feelings about things and staying consistent, your results are going to come regardless, right? So here's what I think is more important is we want to focus on the things that we can control. We can't control exactly how the scale is going to respond. We can certainly point to why it might be up or down, but it is your effort, your habits, and your consistency. Those things are in your control. You can do things to make sure your effort, habits, and consistency are on plan, on target, right? And that eventually is going to lead to your results. So stop spinning your wheels, trying to manipulate the scale. Do the things, right, that are going to cause weight loss, and then allow your body to do what it's going to do.